I think that the questions that we receive are they're far reaching, but each jurisdiction, each country has got their own little twist, their own little angle on how this could be done. Saylor has written the book on how to do it in the US, and everybody is trying to follow that as far as behind as they are. But then when you start to look at a Mexico or a Thailand or a UK, there's always little angles to it that need to be addressed. Um, Everybody wants to do it like strategy, but they're a long way off from doing that. So in the short term, it's custody, it's proof of reserves, it's legal ramifications, it's all these different parts of putting together a whole new way of doing business. Metrics, of course, is the big one. They try to measure these companies using old Wall Street nomenclature, old Wall Street metrics, and they just don't apply. And so, how do you go to an investor base,
Right.
especially a non-Bitcoin savvy investor base, and say, "Hey, here's my business. Here's what I want to do," and it's just a blank stare because they want to hear the metrics that they've been using for the last 50 years.
Right. And Tim, as you're in these meetings with other business leaders who are maybe looking to run Saylor's playbook, you and I both know not everybody is Saylor, right? You have a visionary leader. He's been doing it for 5 years. Their cost basis is pretty low. What do you tell inspired leaders who are looking to run this playbook, but like you can't run the same playbook if you don't necessarily come from that same team? Is that doable, or are you giving them alternative ways to start their own strategies or their own Bitcoin strategies that maybe they have their own playbook that differs a little from Michael's? Like, how do you go about negotiating that with people who are interested?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first point is when you look at BitcoinTreasuries.net and you see 180 some companies that are Bitcoin treasury companies, those are not necessarily levered or doing the strategy playbook. They just are like a Tesla or a GameStop that have Bitcoin on their balance sheet. And some companies that you've never heard of that they may have even forgotten that they have Bitcoin on the balance sheet. So there's only a couple dozen companies that are really um, trying to do this 2x levered, if you want to call it that, sort of leverage Bitcoin equity, MicroStrategy playbook sort of plan. And the communication, the transparency, and getting up to speed on digital distribution, digital media, those are a lot of the conversations. I mean, I would tell everyone, and I have, whether I'm advising them or not, like your earnings call should be the way that Strategy and Semler have done it. It should be video and audio, not just audio on X and YouTube, so that you can,
Hmm.
right? Everybody can see your face. You should have Q&A.
Yeah.
You should take it to that level. There's no reason not to. That's going to become the Bitcoin standard because, calling it the gold standard probably doesn't make sense. But between transparency and then the communication, which is certainly written, it's all of the media. It's actually creating that conversation. I think that's important, and there's a fine line between uh, having it be so professional and stuffy that no one's going to listen to it or read about it, and being a little too TikToky where you might be losing credibility with some folks. So I think it's this we're birthing a new industry and there are no hard and fast rules. And then the third aspect is like you could just have Bitcoin on your balance sheet, or you could actually create Bitcoin yield with that. You could make it productive. You could have a product or service and in addition to that, have the Bitcoin actually do something. Is that a good idea? Is it not? You have people on both sides of that conversation. So a lot to talk about. And I firmly believe that 6 months from now, we'll see companies doing things that we don't see anyone doing right now. And it'll really redefine what a Bitcoin treasury company is.
Yeah, just to add on to
Yeah.
that, um, it's been really interesting to me the last year uh, to try to say who is a Bitcoiner, what is a Bitcoiner, and what is a Bitcoin company.
Hmm.
For example, uh, who's the biggest Bitcoin company? Well, is it Strategy because they have the most Bitcoin on the balance sheet, or is it Tesla because they're
Hmm.
the biggest company with Bitcoin on the balance sheet? Um, who is a
Hmm.
Bitcoiner? If somebody just says, all I care about is the treasury aspects, or all I care about is the art aspects, then how does that make them not a Bitcoiner because they're not interested in the freedom money side of it, et cetera? The little
Hmm.
story I always tell is if Saylor had said we're going to be a diamond treasury company, would all the employees have to then wear diamonds all the time and learn how to grade diamonds? No, probably not. So how does that make you a Bitcoin company or not? You even talk to people, I won't name any companies, but you talk to people at some of these companies that you consider like crypto companies or Bitcoin companies, and they're like, yeah, I don't even own any crypto. And you're like, well, I guess not. I mean, if you worked at Waste Management, do you have to get excited about trash pickup? Or if you worked at the Boy
Right.
Scouts of America, is it okay to hate kids? It's like it's a company at the end of the day, and how they manage their treasuries seems to be independent. So it's been really interesting trying to get your head around what does this mean to be a Bitcoin company and what does it really mean to be orange pilled? Yeah, I mean, I am a cycle guy. Having worked at Mara, I see how the miners cycle their business through buying more miners, shutting miners down, finding cheaper energy. So, that whether it's the power laws or something else, there is a 4-year cycle built into this on purpose. How much of a correction we'll see next year, I'm not going to make any bets. But if you're following the Sailor playbook, then you should
Hmm.
be planning your debt based on those cycles and having at least 4, if not 5 years built into that debt so that as long as the price is not lower 5 years later than the current date, you're never going to get called on that Bitcoin. Now, are they all doing
Hmm.
that? It doesn't look like it. It looks like there's some that are taking 1-year debt instruments that are in some cases predatory. And you're just looking at it saying, well, wait a minute, how are you going to pay this debt off next year? Oh, we'll just raise more debt. So is somebody going to screw it up by planning their debt incorrectly? Is somebody going to do self-custody or lose their keys? Probably. And that one uh, smelly shirt is going to make the whole closet smell for a while. And that could be a cause for some, panic selling, some runs on the market or whatever. But in the long run, as Bitcoin will persevere, we all know it will, these treasury companies are going to just get more and more powerful, for lack of a better word. So
Hmm.
it's not something that I mean, I've been trying to time the market for 14 years and I fail every time. You got to buy and hold and go against what your feed tells you and just bear down. You want to add on to
Yeah.
that,
Tim, do
Tim?
you share that sentiment? Yeah.
No, I take the other side of that coin. I don't think we're going to $1 million by the end of the year, but as Tom Lee said on CNBC this morning, he's calling for $200,000 Bitcoin by the end of the year. Saylor, when he was asked about it by Ross Sorkin this morning, said, yes, many analysts think Bitcoin will be above 150,000 by the end of the year. One of the most recent Robert Breedlove podcasts, he was interviewing the CEO of American Bitcoin that just went public on the NASDAQ last week. And I don't know where these numbers
Hmm.
came from. Nobody knows the future, at least no one that I've met, but he was spouting off numbers that were very interesting. So far this year, I believe the inflows into corporations on the Bitcoin side is about 140 billion. He said um, they're expecting 200 billion by the end of the year and as much as 350 billion next year. So if those numbers are in any way, shape, or form correct, maybe we grind higher, and of course there'll be volatility. So maybe the truth is somewhere in the middle.
That's fair. And you mentioned you're still a cycle guy. You believe in the cycles. But one of the interesting narratives during this cycle, we've heard it specifically from Matt Hogan over at Bitwise, is that the cycles as we know them are probably not going to be the same going forward, very much in part to all of this, institutional money that we're seeing get flooded into the market. Do you think that's going to be the case? Are we going to kind of, those volatility swings, are they just going to be muted going forward and everything will still be a slow up and to the right? Or how do you see that playing out? Will we still be seeing the cycles as we have in the past, or is that, of the past at this point?
Yeah, I mean, that's what the math says. The math says that the cycle should get, less and less volatile, right? And you'll get more
Hmm.
compression on those cycles. But if you, on YouTube, there's a series called The Physics of Bitcoin, and it gets into this about the 5 different stages of mining and then retail and or whatever that exuberance is, and then how it goes too high. So if by Christmas, we're looking at 350, even just as a made up number, yeah, that's going to be too
Mhm.
much. And that's going to cause the market to say, whoops, we went too far. And then once you start selling off, you sell off like crazy. Uh, that's my story. I'm sticking to it for now. If I'm wrong, then I'll never be on another one of these shows again. But if I'm right, I'll regret not having written the book on this. I mean, I have kind of written a long paper, which isn't really turning into a good book yet, but it's, Bitcoin was discovered, not invented, discovered. It's sound money, it's perfect code, it's perfect math, it's the way to do money. And Copernicus and Galileo had the same resistance when they first said, you know what, I'm not sure that the Earth's at the center of the universe. But the people who had the interest in the Earth being at the center, the church, were like, well, no, we can't even listen to that. And so you're getting the same thing with governments and Wall Street that are saying, no, you can't tell us we're getting rid of the fiat system. That doesn't work for us. And so they're resisting it. But if Bitcoin is a discovery of sound money and gravity was a discovery of why the Earth's not at the center of the universe, the thing I keep saying is that for Bitcoin to not go through the cycles as the math and the code dictate, it would be like Earth taking a trip around Jupiter. That's not how gravity works. That's not how sound money works. And so that's kind of where my head is right now. And if I'm wrong, you'll never hear from me again. But that's 14 years of being in this and where I think we are.
That's part of fun of the game of the Bitcoin universe, though, those prognostications of the future. And Tim, while we're at it, what do you think? Are we still stuck in this pattern of choppy cycles, or are things starting to move a little more slow and steady up into the right going forward? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, to your point, I think we will see more and more muted cycles, less and less volatility. I think at a certain point, it could also surprise to the upside because of the scarcity factor. I think Jeff Park has written a little bit on that over the past year. But yeah, I think everything kind of rhymes, right? You had a few different things this time. You had an all-time high before the halving, and now everybody thinks we should be at two, three, 400,000, and we're still at 100. So whatever you think's
Right.
going to happen, maybe just hedge it to the opposite. But I think the institutions are here, the corporates are here. We could spend a whole hour just talking about the preferred products from strategy and that it looks like Metaplan's going to be rolling out. Uh, I think they'll be slow to start. They have been slow to start, but as they ramp up, I can see a world where you're raising billions of dollars a week and then tens of billions of dollars a week out of those fixed income markets. And um, that's kind of my why I think we may grind higher with a lot of volatility.
You know
Of
where it'd be
course.
would be a fantastic place to kind of hear some thought leaders and experts talk about this and
Tell us.
maybe be in the room with the smartest people in the room. I think September 17th in New York City at the Bitcoin Treasuries Unconference would be a fantastic place for you to
Well,
be.
Hmm.
for those who are joining late, tell us a little bit more about that, Ed.
Yeah, so September 17th, New York City, 350 people in the room, 100,000 online, but it's going to be one of those events you want to be in the room, shaking hands, meeting people at the tables. But yeah, we'll be hosting the biggest thought leaders in the space, Bitcoin Treasuries Media. Only, what, few dozen tickets left. So uh, I will create a coupon code called Roxom if I haven't already for 21% off. So at the
Oh, there you
conclusion of
go.
this episode here, you can go to that same get tickets and get 21% off your ticket using coupon code Roxom.